Well, here I am, armed for battle. Uh, the good book say, and the shofar, the ram's horn, on high holy days like Yom Kippur or the Day of Atonement, or when a bridegroom is coming to bring his bride back to his home, or when Christ returns in glory, uh, the archangels will blow on the shofar. So now our brothers, our older brothers, the Jews, are celebrating Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement, sometime this week. And if you listen to the word itself, atonement, at one meant. Something is going to be made one. Now the whole Bible, I'm going to leave this down for now, the whole Bible, the Old Testament, and I'm serious here, and I hope you pay attention to it, is in chapter 16 of the prophet Ezekiel. And give or take, some years, Ezekiel was in exile in Babylon with the Jewish nation. And he has this vision, this prophecy. And he says, the word of the I am, the word who spoke to Moses on Sinai, was addressed to me, Ezekiel, as follows: Son of man, confront Jerusalem. Confront my people, my chosen people, the Jews, with their filthy crimes. Say, the Lord God says this: by origin and birth, you belong to the land of Canaan. Your father was an Amorite, your mother a Hittite. Be like you saying to me, your father was Irish, your mother was English, your father was black, your mother was white. He kind of insults them. Then he says, at birth, the very day you were born, there was no one to cut your navel string, or wash you in cleansing water, or rub you with salt, or wrap you in napkins. No one leaned kindly over you to do anything like that for you. You were exposed in the open fields. You were as unloved as that on the day that you were born. Now, who's the little girl? The little girl are God's chosen people, the Jews. Amazing. His chosen. And then he says, I saw you, I being the Lord God, I saw you struggling in your blood as I was passing. And I said to you, as you lay in your blood, live and grow like the grass of the fields. You developed, you grew, you reached marriageable age. Your breasts and your hair both grew, but you were quite naked. Then I saw you as I was passing. The time had come, the time for love. I spread part of my cloak over you and covered your nakedness. I bound myself by oath. I made a covenant with you, a marriage covenant with you. It is the Lord Yahweh who speaks, and you became mine. Now do you know who they are? The Jews are the chosen people of God. And it's all expressed here in terms of a little girl abandoned in the desert that he tells to live and grow, and he marries her. The chosen people of God. I bathed you with water. I washed the blood off you. I anointed you with oil. I gave you embroidered dresses, fine leather shoes, a linen headband, and a cloak of silk. I loaded you with jewels, gave you bracelets for your wrists and a necklace for your throat. I gave you nose ring and earrings. I put a beautiful diadem on your head. You were loaded with gold and silver and dressed in fine linen and embroidered. More beautiful, you rose to be queen. The fame of your beauty spread through the nations since it was perfect. Because I had clothed you with my own splendor, it is the Lord who speaks. So this abandoned little girl in the desert is the Jewish nation. And the marriage image, the covenant, he spread his cloak to cover her nakedness, and she became his. Let nobody in the world forget this. The Jews are the chosen people of God. And you say, well, what about the Jews that rejected Jesus? The Jews are the chosen people of God to this day. They may have, some of the Jews rejected Christ, who was the I am in the flesh, but God didn't reject them. So it's an extraordinary mystery. Now, that's the whole Bible in a nutshell. Now, he says to them here, you became infatuated with your own beauty. The Jewish nation was famous, especially during the times of David and Solomon. The wisdom of Solomon, the Queen of Sheba came from the ends of the earth to listen to the wisdom of Solomon. Who doesn't know about King David, the bride of Christ? And then he said, you became infatuated with your own beauty. You have used your fame to make yourself a prostitute. You have offered your services to all comers. You have taken your clothes to brighten your high places, and there you played the whore. That's the whole Old Testament. God chooses a people to be his own, and in season and out of season, they were unfaithful to him. They went after the false gods. So what happens? The punishment for adultery is death by stoning. Remember that in the New Testament, the priests of the temple dragged the woman who had been caught in the act of adultery down in front of Jesus, who was at the temple, and they said to him, in the law of Moses it said, such women should be stoned to death. What do you have to say? And so that applies to, the Jewish nation was committing adultery by worshiping the false gods. So they had to have a Yom Kippur, where they would get back with God, if you like. And the day of Yom Kippur is kind of extraordinary. I'll read a little bit to you from the text here. On the day of Yom Kippur, the tribes would assemble. Ezra the priest would read from the book of the law from morning till night. And the more he read from the book of the law, the people of God, the Jews, would realize that they had sinned, and they begin to weep and mourn over their sins. They also understand very clearly that the punishment for adultery against God is death. So, death by stoning. So what do? This is what they did. They read from the book of the law, and he says, he, the priest, 2 goats are to be led forward, or it could be 2 sheep. He is to draw lots for the 2 goats, and a lot one for Yahweh, the I am who spoke to Moses on Sinai, and the other to Azazel, the demon of the desert. Aaron, the priest, is to offer up the goat whose lot was marked for Yahweh, the I am, and offer it as a sin offering. The goat whose lot was marked for Azazel shall be set before Yahweh still alive to perform the rite of atonement, sending it out into the desert to Azazel. So here we go on the Day of Atonement. The priest has read from the book of the law. The people know that they have broken the law. They've been adulterous bride of Christ. They are to die. So the priest then will take a goat or a ram, and he will say the sins of the people onto the goat. We have committed adultery, we have stolen, we have worshipped false gods, we have coveted our neighbor's wife. And then the goat is led out of the desert, out of the camp, into the desert, where he's turned over to Azazel, the demon of the desert. Later on in time in history, you'll see Jesus being led out of the city of Jerusalem, freighted down with the cross, carrying the sins of all mankind, the divine scapegoat. And then the second goat or sheep, the high priest would cut his throat, life is in the blood, and shed the blood of the goat and collect the blood in a basin. And once a year, he'd go behind the veil of the temple into the Holy of Holies, and he would sprinkle some of the blood on the Holy of Holies, the Ark of the Covenant, and sprinkle some on the people. And that's how, on the Day of Atonement, at the time of Moses, that they made up for the sin of adultery they had committed against the Lord God of hosts. The Day of Atonement. Extraordinary. Now, look at us here, living at the end of the ages. Jesus, the Lamb of God. John the Baptist sees Jesus coming towards him, and he said, look, 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 the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. And so you have Jesus then, freighted down with the sins of mankind, being driven out of Jerusalem to Calvary, the divine scapegoat. And then back again to the Old Testament, the second goat, when the priest would go behind the veil of the temple and sprinkle some of the blood in the Holy of Holies, Jesus, 3 hours later, from the cross, cries out, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. And he passes behind the veil into the heavenly sanctuary, not with the blood of bulls and goats, but with his own blood. And so it is then that our Yom Kippur, our Day of Atonement, is the Lord Jesus Christ. And it's fascinating to record, the historian Josephus recalled in the, whatever it was, 1st or 2nd century, that on the day Christ died, the veil of the temple in Jerusalem was actually torn in two from top to bottom. And it's quite remarkable when you consider that the temple veil was 11 inches thick with layers and layers of fabric, and it was torn from the top down. Only a divine hand could have torn it. So the sacrifices, the Day of Atonements of the old law are over with. And now we have the Lamb of God. Our Day of Atonement passes behind the veil into heaven, where he continues to make intercession for us who are living at the end of the ages. He will come again in glory soon. That's what I have here. The Lord will return, the bridegroom will return at the sound of the archangel's trumpet to claim his bride, the church. If you wish, I'd encourage you today to go to the book of Revelations and read the very last, about 5 verses of the book of Revelations, and it'll tell you about that the Lord will return at the sound of the archangel's trumpet, and he will gather his elect from the 4 winds and bring us to the bridal chamber that is heaven. Amen.